with deckless. Definitely a contrast in styles when it comes to personality. Jacob of the 16, I would say the most introverted player in the field. Kevin Jones, anything but.
I would agree. Jacob, not much with words. Kevin, he's a talker, and he's a funny one. Though, looks like Kevin maybe opening him up a little bit. A little chat here before the match does begin.
It's hard not to be charmed by Kevin. It's hard not to interact. He's a very gregarious, funny guy, loose, doesn't take himself too seriously.
Really? He calls himself the daddy. Yeah, he doesn't take himself too seriously.
This is the second time these players have squared off. They were in Group A during the Legacy portion. Kevin winning that match against Jacob.
Yeah, Kevin, I loved his Legacy deck choice here this week, and I thought he had the metagame pretty well pegged. Brought Merfolk to the table with main deck copies of Chalice of the Void, and that was a very tough matchup there for Wilson. And we are underway. Jones, the higher seed, he'll get the option to play, and we start our wild card round. Jones with just a Mystic Monastery. Wilson will sacrifice a Wooded Foothills. It's a basic forest, and we'll see what Jacob has to play on turn number 1. Looks like he'll be going to a Scythe Leopard. And we'll head back Kevin Jones's way. Jones' draw for the turn was a copy of Mantis Rider. Jones will play a Windswept Heath. He'll sacrifice that. We'll have a Plains here in just a moment. And I think we may see a Jace here. Now, Kevin's plan in the matchup, I think, is to just really play the control role. I know he's Jeskai aggro, but it feels like he'll be playing the control role in this matchup.
Well, the best spot that Jones can get into in the matchup here, as you see him cast a Jace, is have a threatened play that's attacking, Mantis Rider being the best of the bunch, and then back it up with a removal spell that covers the combo. That makes it very challenging for Wilson to do much of anything. You can see he already has Mantis Rider in hand. You back that up with something like Valorous Stance or Jeskai Charm that covers the combo, and it's going to be hard for Wilson to be able to get past the blocker without getting blown out by the removal spell.
Kevin with one of those San Diego Comic-Con Jaces that are hard to see on coverage, as Wilson's going to play a Bloodstained Mire. He'll trigger landfall twice here. I think we'll see the Mire search up a mountain. And there is a basic mountain, so that'll trigger landfall on the Scythe Leopard yet again. And now for Jacob, it's a face-up Den Protector. So back over to Kevin now. Windswept Heath the draw. Mountain will be the play for the turn. Now, a lot of people have gotten away from Mantis Rider. Jones has always been a Mantis Rider fan. He's been playing it since day one.
Yep, winning the Open in New Jersey week 1 of Khans of Tarkir Standard and has not looked back. I can't remember the last Standard tournament he's played in that I've covered where he was not playing some sort of Mantis Rider aggressive take on Jeskai.
Neither can I. Mantis Rider does come down on turn number 3 here for Jones. Wilson will fall down to 15. And now it's time for Wilson to untap. He's got 2 lands, a Scythe Leopard, and a Den Protector as he goes into his 3rd turn. Wooded Foothills the draw. You can see some red cards in hand. One of them is a copy of Titan Strength. Den Protector's text, as far as blocking is concerned, seems like they could play a huge role this game.
Yep, it's one of his best threats of at least getting around the Mantis Rider and forcing the issue on Jones to have a removal spell. Cards like Titan Strength become immense, of course, pair very well with it. But this might be Wilson's last shot to get in a lot of damage uncontested before having to face down Jones next turn with mana at the ready and a blocker in Mantis Rider.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing to think about there, where Jacob could be in a real trouble here on his 3rd turn of the game. But Kevin's hand, he's got a Valorous Stance, he's got a Fiery Impulse, and he's got an active Jace.
Yes, he's got the tools to force Wilson's hand and play some pump spells to be able to punch through some damage. And at that point, Kevin's cheap instant speed interaction might be too much for Wilson to overcome.
Again, the one thing that you did mention is that Wilson has access to 0 removal in his deck as far as, Fiery Impulse, Wild Slash, things of that nature. His spells, Autarchus Command, become immense, Teamer, Battle Rage, and Titan Strength, all 4 ofs.
Yeah, the landfall deck is much more focused on just executing the combo. The expense is you don't really interact with the board at least game one. And this is a matchup where it's really important to interact with the board because so many of the threats are problematic playing offense and defense. Hangerback, Walker, Seeker of the Way, and of course Mantis Rider.
Windswept Heath the land for the turn. That'll trigger the landfall on the Scythe Leopard. Jacob's got to figure out, is there a way for him to punch a hole through this?
The issue here for Wilson is he has to figure out, all right, what am I doing this turn to get in some damage? And what can I leave in reserve to be able to try to get some damage in next turn, assuming that Jones will have mana and removal spells at the ready?
For Wilson, his hand is loaded with spells right now. He's got a Tarkus Command, he has a Become Immense, he's got a Teamer Battle Rage, and I believe a Titan Strength. So he's got a lot of goodies over there, and it looks like the Leopard's going to come to the battlefield. Into the red zone. Perhaps Jace interested in blocking here.
Seems a little early for that. If Jones thinks that he's got a huge advantage if he gets untapped with the cards in his hand, you could see a chump block and a loot. It feels a little early to me for that line of play, but I suppose it's on the table.
Yeah, for whatever reason, when you're playing against this kind of deck, you feel a little nervous.
Well, I think that if Wilson was trying to go for some sort of big play this turn, you would have seen the Den Protector coming as well.
Looks like Dispel was the draw off of Jace.
And Dispel really pays out Jones for taking this conservative line of play, because now he's going to untap with Dispel, Valorous Stance, and Fiery Impulse at the ready. That's going to be a lot of interaction when Wilson tries to make a move next turn.
Over to Kevin Jones will go. Land number 4 is a Windswept Heath. Here comes Mantis Rider. And what Kevin has done, really, for over a year, is he's put Mantis Rider on the battlefield, attacked with it, and then sat behind it with open mana.
Yeah, and this is just so much interaction to have alongside a Mantis Rider at this stage of the game. As someone who plays a lot of Atarka Red, the Nightmare scenario is blocker you can't handle with interaction. The Vigilance threats are the worst of all of them because they're offense and defense at the same time. And Kevin's hand is just stocked with basically the maximum amount of cheap interaction you can have at this stage. All of it interacts with Pump, too. You have a Fiery Slash if Wilson initiates something. You have a Dispel if he initiates something. And if he can play over the top of all of that, you have a Valorous Stance to catch you up.
Monastery Swiftspear, the draw here for Wilson. He'll start by playing that. There's a Wooded Foothills. That'll trigger the landfall on the Scythe Leopard. And now here come the creatures. And now it's time for Kevin Jones to react. This is kind of the big turn, it feels like.
If I'm Kevin, I'm just putting a block in front of the Den Protector. If you block the Monastery Swiftspear or the Scythe Leopard, that Wilson can get the Monastery Swiftspear big enough to kill the Mantis Rider just by casting spells, even if you counter them. And the Scythe Leopard can get punched through your Mantis Rider just by landfall triggers. By blocking the Den Protector, you're forcing Wilson to play something into your Mantis Rider to be able to punch through it. And at that point, your Dispels, your Fiery Impulses, and your Valor Stance become very powerful.
Though if you are Kevin, you're playing a bit of a guessing game on what's in Jacob's hand. I agree with you. I think that the Den Protector is the safest block here.
You got to force Wilson to initiate the action here. Yeah. You can't just let him trade with the Mantis Rider. And this is the only block that Jones has that forces Wilson to initiate.
Jacob will sacrifice a Windswept Heath, which means we'll have a landfall trigger for the Leopard. That's going to turn into a 3/3. Keep in mind, for Kevin, he has a Treasure Cruise in the graveyard. He has not accomplished Spell Mastery for the Fiery Impulse just yet.
But he has a Dispel, and he has a Fiery Impulse, so it's likely he can get there if he needs to.
For Jacob, it'll be a copy of a Tarkus Command. We'll get modes on what this is doing. Likely to be deal 3, and then +1/+1. But sometimes, in situations like this, the red-green landfall deck does want to put a land on the battlefield. But it's going to be 3 damage and Pump. That is confirmed. And we'll see how Jones wants to respond here. He'll start by sacrificing a fetch land.
To me, this seems like a good opportunity to use the Fiery Impulse on the Den Protector.
You want to go on the Den Protector with Fire Impulse.
I think so.
The creature he's blocking?
Yeah, I don't want to trade with the Mantis Rider.
Okay, sure. I like starting with Dispel. That's what he's going to do here. I mean, there'll still be a prowess trigger on the Swift Spear. Now, if Jacob pumps the Den Protector, then I'm fine responding and killing it. But with the way that Jacob set this turn up, he's only got the ability to play 2 spells.
It's kind of the same either way. I think in the long term, the Dispel is a more valuable resource in hand than the Shock. Because it's possible Jones gets low enough that he has to worry about a target's command just burning him out of the game.
Sure.
So I just value the Dispel a little bit more highly. Either play's fine.
2 spells in the graveyard now for Spell Mastery. Right now the Swift Spear is a 2/3, the Leopard is a 3/3, and now here will be a landfall trigger, assuming Kevin does not respond, and it does not appear that he will. So another Cinderglade, and it looks like a landfall trigger on the stack.
Hard to imagine this turn working out in such a way that the Valorous Dance or the Fiery Impulse doesn't blow Wilson out.
Yeah. And the fact that Kevin has both here is very tough.
Yeah.
Here's Become Immense. That's going to go on the Den Protector.
And now, if he wants to, Jones can Fiery Impulse the Den Protector and also use the Valorous Stance to kill a Side Leopard or Monastery Swift Spear. He can also just take the hit and leave the Valorous Stance as leftovers in case Wilson goes for another pump spell.
Well, what I like that Kevin can do here is he can Fire Impulse to take care of that. He can Valorous Stance to take care of something else, and if he draws a land that enters the battlefield untapped, he can use Sarkhan to kill another creature.
Yeah, the other side of it is, this landfall deck is very scary with its ability to pump. It's possible that Jones, let's say he uses a Valorous Stance here to kill one of the creatures, he's still at risk of pump spells mattering the next turn. As long as he sits back on the Valorous Stance, it's very hard for Wilson to initiate much that's threatening. But the fact that he has Sarkhan in hand and already has 2 red mana means he may want to just tap out this turn, maximize the chance that he draws land number 5, kills the last threat, and still has Mantis Rider plus Sarkhan in play.
Yeah, my thought process here is, if you're Kevin, if your last card in hand is Sarkhan, like if he Valorous Stances something here, that means basically all of his draws are good.
Yes.
Outside of, I would say, like Monastery, Mystic Monastery. Any land that enters the battlefield untapped is good, and most of the spells that he's going to draw are good. Again, there are some bad things that he can draw here. Jace isn't exquisite. There are some stinkers. But I think for the most part, his draws will be pretty good here. And there's a Fiery Impulse to take care of the Swift Spear. So again, a pretty good draw, and now here's an attack for 3. And I believe Wilson is just left with pump spells in hand, so he's got to draw a creature. And you can see the grip there. Titan Strength, Teamer Battle Rage, and he has to just pass the turn back after playing a Windswept Heath. There's a land. Here's a Sarkhan. Going to give that haste and come across here for 7 points of damage. And that'll do it. Kevin Jones is going to win game number 1 here over Jacob Wilson. Jeskai aggro up a game here over Red-Green Landfall. You can see why this matchup is going to be very difficult here for Jacob. Kevin's got a lot of cheap interaction.
That's the recipe right there. You get Mantis Rider into play on turn 3. You untap with cheap interaction in your hand. Wilson has to play into you. You get to use all your cheap interactions. As you saw, that combat was disastrous for Wilson.
Yep.
And as long as Jones gets that kind of setup with Mantis Rider plus a bunch of cheap spells, it's likely to happen game after game.
To the sideboards we are going to go. We'll take a look at the 15 cards that each player is working with. We'll start with Jacob Wilson as he'll be on the play here for game number 2. He's got 2 copies of Ash Cloud Phoenix, 4 copies of Flamewake Phoenix, a Hooting Mandrills, 3 Fiery Impulses, a Rending Volley, a Sova Dragonclaw, 2 Roast, and an Evolving Wilds.
I think some amount of removal needs to be coming in. I think the Rending Volley is safe. And it's possible he wants Fiery Impulse as well, as that's another potential answer to Mantis Rider. Because of the copies of Radiant Flames in Jones' sideboard and the absence of Ojutai's command, it's possible that the Hooting Mandrills will come in, and the Ash Cloud Phoenix is not a terrible late game threat. I think Flamewake Phoenix is probably off the table in this matchup because of the Mantis Riders.
For Kevin Jones, 2 Irrational Clairs, 2 Den Protectors, 2 Outpost Siege, 3 Disdainful Stroke of Dispel, a Dromoka's Command on the splash, along with 2 Radiant Flames and 2 Roast.
Not getting any easier for Wilson here.
No.
2 copies of Arishan Cleric, a Dispel, 2 Radiant Flames, and in this matchup you can even bring Roast in. I think it's kind of anemic against the builds that are playing with a bunch of token generation, but Wilson is just casting creatures out of his hand, so I would just bring in more removal here.
Yeah, Kevin has the ability to really load up now. You mentioned the Clerics. I even kind of like the Dramoka's command, honestly. I think there's a lot of things he can do.
And I think his matchup here is good enough that he can look at getting rid of some of his most powerful cards just to keep the deck lean. Cards like Jace, Treasure Cruise, even things like Wingmate Rock, I think are cards that Jones can get away from and just lean on his good cheap creatures and all of his cheap interaction.
Well, those are the options there for both players. They will shuffle up here and get ready for game number 2. Jacob Wilson will be on the play as he is behind a game. And in the meantime, we are going to talk about Season 1 of the SCG Tour, where we started in Las Vegas. Brian Braun did win our first Open of the year, so congratulations to him. But in 2016, we'll start things up in Cincinnati.
Yeah, back-to-back Modern to start the year in Cincinnati and Charlotte, then back-to-back Standard to round out January in Atlanta and Columbus, then the Regional Championships, which will be Modern on February 6th. Go.starcitygames.com/regionals for more information. We just posted the venues, so find the Regional Championships closest to you. Modern in Louisville, a Legacy Open in Philadelphia at the end of February, then Standard in Indianapolis and Baltimore, then the Season 1 Invitational Columbus, Ohio, April 15th through the 17th, Standard and Modern as the invitational formats.
Of course, for all of our players who do register for our main event, our Open for those particular weekends, Kitchen Links will be the playmat that is available. Simple to get. You sign up, you get one of them.
Free, on-site, with registration for any of the 2-day $20,000 Open Series events. You don't have to register ahead of time or be one of the first X people to register. Just show up, get the playmat.
Looking forward to seeing our players at each and every single one of those dates on the SCG Tour for season number 1. And, of course, for the SCG Tour, the culmination of the year is where we're at right now, here at the Players' Championship. So looking forward to players that are going to dedicate some time to get ready to come back to this tournament yet again. And I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Jones is one of those players. It's his second year in a row here.
With the restructuring of the qualification and a lot more emphasis being placed on the Open Series events and events like regionals, it's going to be challenging. You know, Kevin has done a lot of his work over the last couple of years in the IQs, but Kevin is also very dedicated to the game. It would not surprise me to see him traveling all around trying to get back to the Players' Championship for the 3rd year.
And he is making a deep run into this tournament, into day 2 of competition, improving on what he was able to do last year. And I think for him, last year was a disappointment. This year, he's a little bit happier to be playing in day 2 with a lot of high-stake matches. We talked to him this morning. He said it's really cool to just play matches with this amount on the line.
A lot of money on the line, and this was the first, I believe, the first elimination match that he's won in the Players' Championship yesterday against Rudy Briska. That locked him up for day 2, ensured an extra $500. Worst case scenario here is he walks away with $1,000, and a big game here against Jacob Wilson, opportunity to maybe eliminate one of the best players in the tournament.
For Kevin, 28 years old from Kingstown, New York, Season 2 point champion is how he qualified here this weekend. 8 Open Series top 8s with 1 win back in Edison last year where Concertar Cure was released, and he was playing Jeskai then. He is playing Jeskai now. 276 Open Series points this year. A 61% win percentage, 8-5-1 lifetime against the field as well.
And if you look at the standard decks that we have in this event, this might be the most lopsided pairing possible.
It's a very hard matchup for Jacob.
This was a great draw for Kevin to start the day.
There's not really much more you can say. It's just, you look at this deck list to deck list. Of course, Jacob, a fantastic player, platinum level pro, one of the best players, if not the best player in this particular tournament. But card to card, matchup to matchup, it's going to be very hard for him to win here. And you saw that in game number 1.
There's almost no bad cards in Jones's deck for the matchup. The only cards I'm critical of are still cards that are fine. They just happen to be 5 mana in Sarkin and Wingmate Rock. Jones's matchup is so good here that I think he can just get away from the expensive cards, even though they're powerful in the matchup, because I would just want to hedge against the worst possible draws.
For Jacob, his first time at the Players' Championship, the 20-year-old from Vancouver, Canada, he was our Season 1 Invitational champion back when we were in Richmond. Beat Reed Duke in the finals, 6 Open Series top 8s, 3 wins on the resume, 1 Invitational top 8, and he got the job done there earlier this year. For him, not a ton of Open Series points this year because he qualified so early, but you see the win percentage for him, 66% and 5-2 lifetime against the field.
Lighter on Open Series resume in terms of matches played. You see a lot of our competitors have hundreds of matches on the Open Series in 2015. Jacob with around 56, I believe, is the count there. But a lot of that had to do with just qualifying for the Players' Championship at the Season 1 Invitational and not attending that many events throughout the year. But Jacob definitely has the respect of his peers in this event. He's well regarded and maybe the best technical player in the tournament.
I think he might be the best young player in the game right now, too. I mean, he's only 20. And really, his accomplishments really speak for themselves. A Pro Tour runner-up, finished 2 Pro Tour top 8s on the resume, an invitational win. He's here in the Players' Championship in day number 2, his first time here. He's going to be a heck of a player for some time.
And highly regarded by his peers.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what he accomplishes over his Magic career. I think it's going to be very, very impressive stuff. We do see our backup match there between Joe Lissette and Logan Mize. I have a feeling we'll have time to jump that way. If we do have updates for you guys on that match, we'll of course let you know. As Nick Miller doing a write-up of that match for you guys as well. Well, of course, we'll have updates all weekend long on Twitter at SCG Live. You can also use the hashtag SCGPC as we're in day number 2 of competition. We're in our wild card round. And everything that happens here today is single elimination. So you lose, you go home, you win, you stay in, and you make some more money.
So already $1,000 matches being played.
Yep. Loser walks out here with $1,000. The winner, at minimum, going to have $2,000. And talking to the players, they like the feel of day 2. There's a lot on the line. It's stressful, but it's fun. And much like last year as well, you see the players starting to, obviously at the beginning of the weekend, it's pretty high stress. You're doing your interviews, your deck techs, all of that stuff. But they've started to come out of their shell a little bit.
I was watching the Kevin versus Rudy play their elimination match, and the players were definitely gathered around the TV watching. And part of that is they know the same thing is waiting for them tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's just going to be some elimination matches they play. And there's a degree of empathy among the competitors knowing that the same fate awaits them at some point.
For Jacob, he started things off with a Cinderglade. Now he'll play a Forest. The follow-up is a Monastery Swiftspear. And now a Scythe Leopard. Over to Kevin Jones will go. Wingmate rock the draw.
And Kevin sitting on Fiery Impulse, I think his plan here is to try to trap a removal spell. That's a very dangerous thing to do against Monastery Swiftspear because it's not take a lot of spells for that to just play over the top of the removal and for you to take a lot of damage. Typically, I'm an advocate for just killing Monastery Swiftspear. Don't get too fancy.
It'll be the 3rd turn here for Jacob. Become Immense in hand. There's a Tarkus command over there as well. Also a copy of Scythe Leopard in hand. You can see a Bloodstained Mire, which will trigger landfall a couple of times if he wants to go that route. A lot of options here for Jacob. He'll start by playing a Bloodstained Mire. And for Jacob, what's on your radar right now is Wild Slash and Fiery Impulse. You know that there's a 2-damage spell that Kevin could potentially play this turn.
And I think Jacob is also trying to see if there's some way to induce a shock and play over the top of the Tarkus command.
Bloodstained Mire will be sacrificed. There's a basic mountain. We'll see if this landfall trigger does resolve. And if you're Jacob, you feel like maybe Kevin's trying to induce a little bit.
Well, there's some chance. There's also some chance he's just on Radiant Flames. And he's willing to take these hits to try to sweep your board.
Yep. 3 damage and pump is the plan here for Jacob. And will Kevin make a move here? It looks like the answer is yes with Fiery Impulse. He's going to go after Swiftspear. That'll work.
And that's the danger of not just taking care of the Swiftspear right away, why I would have done it. If Wilson has something like Titan Strength in his hand, you take just a load of damage that turn.
Here's another Leopard. We're going to head back Jones's way. Hangerback Walker. And he has a copy of Flooded Strand. I think he might have Radiant Flames in his hand right now. He'll sacrifice this Flooded Strand. And it looks like he's considering basic island. You can see Kevin's hand Treasure Cruise, Wingmate Rock, some things to work towards in the long game. Maybe a little bit of surprise that those cards are still in the deck as he's going to search up a basic Plains.
They're still very powerful.
Of course they are.
But, yeah, I would have tried to get away from the expensive stuff in Jones' deck because I feel like if he just doesn't fall behind early on in the game, he's likely to win pretty easily.
And now here's Radiant Flames. That'll clear away all the creatures. And we're going to head back Jacob Wilson's way. See if he's got anything left in reserve. He's only got 2 cards in his hand. Looks like he may have picked up a copy of Den Protector. He'll play it as a morph. We'll go back over to Jones. Jones will draw another copy of Radiant Flames. And while trading 1 for 1 isn't the sexiest play with Radiant Flames, I like doing it here.
I don't mind it, especially with Treasure Cruise in hand. You're at least getting another card in the graveyard. You don't want that Den Protector to untap because Monastery Swiftspear and a Target's Command are both threatening cards. And if you trade this Radiant Flames with a Become Immense, which is another possibility, you're not upset about that outcome either. I mean, if it's either play Radiant Flames or say go, I think this is a no-brainer.
No, I like playing Radiant Flames here. Here is Become Immense. Entire graveyard's gone. Now, keep in mind, one thing that Wilson can do now is return the Become Immense, but he doesn't have a graveyard to work with. Play Mystic Monastery, pass the turn back over to Jacob. Jacob going to serve in with 2 at least. Don't know if we'll see an Unmegamorph or not. Looks like we will. He'll get a counter, Become Immense will go back to the grip. The follow-up is a Snapping Gnarlid. Back to Jones we're going to go. Kevin will draw. Windswept Heath.
And Kevin falling behind. I mean, his hand's Hangerback Walker, which provides no defense this turn. A Wingmate Rock, which is a little anemic. I guess it's still the biggest thing going on. Wilson has a big draw next turn to a fetch land. If he hits that, he can cast the Become Immense and likely kills Kevin through whatever play he can muster this turn.
Yeah. Become Immense on Den Protector would be game over.
I think Jones, even though it's painful to do, may just have to cast Wingmate Rock this turn. I think he needs to put himself in the best position to be able to block, assuming that Wilson doesn't draw a fetch land. And Hangerback Walker naturally can't block the Den Protector right now, so I would want to just cast the Wingmate Rock.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can go poorly here for Kevin.
This is an impressive display here for the resistance of the Landfall deck. Fiery Impulse and 2 Radiant Flames have been cast this game, and Wilson is not out of this by any stretch.
Nope, still got some game left. Jones is going to sacrifice this Windswept Heath. He'll fall down to 7. Canopy Vista, the weapon of choice here. It looks like Kevin's going to go for a cruise.
This is high risk, high reward. He finds a removal spell here. It looks pretty solid.
Or 2.
Yeah, but he can also just miss and die.
Yep. And at the very least, he's got the backup plan of playing a Hangerback Walker for 1.
Yeah. Although Hangerback Walker for 1 is a lot worse than Hangerback Walker for 2 because Snapping Gnarlid just runs over it rather than trading and getting 2 tokens.
Couple of different cards in hand here now. Still has that Wingmate Rock. Roast in hand.
Problem with the sorcery speed removal is it puts a card in the graveyard.
Yeah.
It makes it more likely that Wilson will be able to kill him next turn with Become Immense. I mean, once you're on the Hangerback Walker play, I don't see that big of a reason to deviate, because at least the next turn you get to go chump block the Gnarlid, most likely, untap, attack, and raid Wingmate Rock. Now you have 2 blockers against 2 attackers. If Wilson bricks, then you start attacking with Wingmate Rock, and that's very good. But I think Roast is a very risky play here.
He's going to take the risk. A lot of huge draws here for Jacob. He'll untap. Teamer Battle Rage the draw.
One of the few cards you would say is a brick here.
Yeah.
Land would have been lethal. A lot of the threats are good too.
Battle Rage is interesting here, I would say.
Well, getting Jones down to 3 has some value when you have a Tarkus command in your deck.
Yep. But actually having the 2 cards in hand together has some value as well. So he can plow through for a lot of damage. This is going to be interesting if he wants to cast it. He will.
He's so far away from being able to cast Become Immense on the cheap that I think he just has to. He gets Jones down to 3. Now he has a lethal draw, and he can for sure cast Become Immense next turn.
Yep. Wild Slash to draw. There's a Prairie Stream.
And with Jones knowing the last card in hand, I doubt I would want to get too fancy with the shock here.
If I'm Kevin, I like Wild Slash, Jace, Hangerback, Walker, go. If I'm in his seat.
Yep.
Dump my hand out. A lot of different things I can do.
Kevin has shown a propensity for wanting to trap with the removal spells. I think when you're this far ahead, assuming that the Gnarlet just dies, you are really far ahead. You don't need to get every last piece of the puzzle here.
I also don't want to try to trap this player.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, too. One of the things on Magic is you have to know the skill of the opponent you're up against. Jacob's not going to fall into a trap. I think it's very unlikely that will happen. And I like this line of play. Just dump my hand, work my way towards Wingmate Rock, work my way towards active Jace, hope I don't die.
Because once he gets a rated Wingmate Rock, if he gets in 1 hit,
that's probably it.
He gains a life. He's out of a Tarkus command range. He has a bunch of blockers. He has the ability to flashback removal spells with Jace. Might be too much to overcome.
Yeah. And keep in mind as well, with the active Jace out there, if active Jace is able to find a counterspell like a Dispel, he's probably good to go.
Yes. He needs basically 1 piece to lock this game up. Once he raids the Wingmate Rock, it's survived the next turn. Wilson's not going to be able to get back into the game past that point.
There's a Windswept Heath. Here comes Hangerback Walker for 1. Wilson's going to fall down to 18. And now there's Wingmate Rock. There'll be a trigger. A raid has been satisfied. And assuming Kevin did trigger that, we go back Jacob's way. Mountain the draw. And it's back-to-back lands here for Wilson that might do him in. There's a Windswept Heath. Excuse me, there's a Wooded Foothills. Now here's an activation of Jace. Jones will draw and discard. There goes Mystic Monastery. He'll untap. I think he may have just drawn a copy of a Ration Cleric. That's what it looks like it is. So here comes Wingmate Rock, the token, and the Hangerback Walker. There will be a trigger. And I don't think there's any coming back now for Jacob.
Valorous Stance is the last card in hand, too, so he's covered against some odd flurry of pump spells.
The Cleric will come down. That's 3 more life headed Kevin's way. And now he is out of a Tarkus command range. Wilson will draw a Cinderglade. And that is going to do it. Kevin Jones is going to win this match here over Jacob Wilson, 2-0. Jeskai Aggro is going to take care of Red-Green Landfall. For Kevin Jones, it might be the biggest win of his Magic career, and for Jacob Wilson, he is out of the Players' Championship.
Kevin Jones is now in the top 8 of the Players' Championship. $2,000 richer at the minimum, has just eliminated perhaps the best player in the entire room. Congratulations to him.
We felt it was